I have seen many people celebrate victory. I've seen even more people cry over failure. But I always say, neither one is final. The world is changing too fast for any of us to stay comfortable. And what happened recently between India and Pakistan, it's not just about them, it's about the future of competition. People say India humiliated Pakistan. Maybe. But I ask, why is America so nervous? Not because someone won or lost, but because the game is no longer the same. You see, competition used to be about territory and noise. Now it is about code, cloud, and quiet progress. India built its strength not by shouting, but by coding. Not by threatening, but by training. While some were busy showing muscles, India was building its digital backbone. Engineers, startups, fintech, satellites, education. Slowly but surely they showed the worlding. We don't need a fight to win. We just need to show results. This is not humiliation. This is a lesson. You do not beat your enemy by hating them. You make them by outgrowing them. You make their weapons useless. That's what happened here. And America. They feel uncomfortable, not because India beat Pakistan, but because the balance of innovation is shifting. And to Pakistan, don't take this as the end. Take this as a signal. In life, when someone humiliates you, you have two options: you get angry and stay weak, or you get serious and start building. I always tell young people, never waste time hating your competitor. Learn from them. Right now, the world doesn't need more fights. It needs more solutions. Humiliation is not the problem. Humiliation is the medicine. It tells you what is broken, the real problem, ignoring it, the real danger, thinking someone else is responsible for your failure. The smart ones will not protest. They will not post. They will prepare. While others tweet, they will train. While others blame, they will build. This is the secret of those who rise. In this new world, you are not strong because you shout. You are strong because your internet is fast, your youth is smart, and your thinking is global. If you understand that, it doesn't matter who humiliated who. It only matters what you're going to do next. Rivalries are not about destruction, but evolution. Many people misunderstand the purpose of competition. They think to win means to eliminate the other side completely, to humiliate them so deeply that they never stand again. But real competition is not a war. It's a mirror. It shows you who you really are, where you truly stand, and how far you have to go. When two nations or two companies or even two individuals compete, they're not just trying to defeat the other. They're trying to become better than their previous selves. It's a process of reflection, discipline, and relentless improvement. When India outpaces Pakistan in a field, whether it is technology, diplomacy, or defense, the focus should not be on mocking or shaming. The real story is how one side grew and what the other side must now do in response. Humiliation is not the climax of rivalry. It is the beginning of pressure, the ignition of hunger, and the spark of transformation. Throughout history, every great competitor has gone through moments of pain, of loss, of deep national or personal embarrassment. Japan rebuilt after the war by not blaming others, but by re-engineering itself to become the world's factory of quality. China didn't rise by arguing with the West. It rose by learning from them, improving faster, working harder. Evolution in rivalry comes when defeat becomes education, not humiliation. When you stop asking, why did they beat us? And start asking, what can we do better tomorrow? That's when you begin to evolve. A rivalry without evolution is just noise. A fight without growth is just ego. The ones who win in the long run are not those who shout louder, but those who listen deeper, observe sharper, and adapt quicker. The problem today is not the existence of rivalry, it is the misunderstanding of it. People believe the end goal of rivalry is dominance, but that is a short-term view. Dominance fades, but excellence endures. True rivalry forces each side to improve their education, infrastructure, innovation, leadership, and even their vision. India and Pakistan have been compared for decades. But the nations that truly move forward are those who don't spend all their energy comparing. They spend their energy building. And those who think humiliation is the end of a journey, they miss the point. Humiliation, especially in a public or geopolitical sense, is a call to evolve. It exposes weaknesses, yes, but more importantly, it reveals what must change. That is not a punishment, that is a blueprint. And any nation, company, or person with humility and vision will use it wisely. Rivalry must evolve from reaction to reflection. When your rival does something better than you, you don't destroy them. You dissect their success. You don't insult them, you investigate their mindset. You don't compete with their ego, you compete with their excellence. That's how evolution happens. That's how the weak grow stronger, the old become new, and the underestimated rise. India's rise is not a humiliation to Pakistan. It is a challenge, and challenges are only negative to those who fear change. The others, they accept, adapt, and accelerate. That's what evolution demands. In business, this is how the smartest startups operate. When the market leader beats them, they don't waste time complaining. They pivot, they learn, they innovate. They find the gaps the big companies can't see. They move faster where others have grown slow. They survive not because they are stronger, but because they evolve quicker. It is the same with nations. The one who evolves faster, who fixes internal issues without external excuses, who focuses on progress rather than pride, that one will rise. Rivalry is not a fight for the throne, it is a race for relevance. And relevance doesn't come from attacking others. It comes from improving yourself until the world cannot ignore you. India's tech rise is not Pakistan's downfall. It's a wake-up call. In every market, when one competitor rises, the others are faced with a decision. Either they complain, criticize, and resist the change, or they watch closely, study quietly, and prepare for their own breakthrough. India's ascent in the digital world, its booming startup ecosystem, global software exports, fintech growth, space exploration, and growing influence in AI, is not a weapon pointed at Pakistan. It is a loud and clear signal that the future is not waiting for anyone. It is moving forward, and whoever adapts will be part of it. Those who cling to outdated systems, old ways of thinking, and excuses will be left behind, not because others pushed them down, but because they refused to stand up in time. Progress does not happen in a vacuum. India didn't wake up one day and find itself a technology powerhouse. It started years ago, with investment in education, a focus on English language training, a culture of engineering and problem solving, a willingness to invite foreign capital, and a government push to digitize its economy. These weren't grand gestures, they were small, consistent actions. And today, those actions have built a foundation that supports unicorns, global developers, smart infrastructure, and a new generation that understands technology is not a luxury. It's a necessity. This rise isn't a humiliation for any country, it's a benchmark. It shows what is possible when a country bets on the future, not the past. In contrast, those who feel humiliated or threatened by India's rise must look inward. The first instinct should not be to react emotionally, but to think strategically. What are we missing? What are we doing wrong? Where are we investing our time, energy, and money? Are we building a generation of coders or a generation of complainers? Are we building software or just rhetoric? These are hard questions, but they are necessary, because every success story in the world began with a moment of honest reflection. And this is one of those moments. The truth is, the global economy has no space for fragile egos. It only recognizes results. If one country becomes the IT hub of the world, it doesn't mean others cannot. But it does mean others must work harder, smarter, and faster. India's rise should not spark resentment. It should spark reform. In Pakistan, in any nation that feels left behind, there must be a cultural shift where failure is studied, not buried. Where youth are empowered with tools, not trapped in blame. Where leaders create ecosystems, not just speeches. The focus should be on building infrastructure, supporting entrepreneurs, creating space for innovation, and removing the fear of failure that keeps people from trying bold things. This is not just about India and Pakistan. This is about how countries behave in an age of rapid transformation. Every time a nation moves ahead, it gives the world an example, not an enemy. And every time a neighbor rises, it gives you a decision to making whether to watch with bitterness or to rise with them. The right choice is never about fighting the future. It is about joining it with full force. Those who think India's progress is Pakistan's defeat misunderstand how the new world works. This is not a zero-sum game. The digital economy rewards collaboration, competition, and contribution. There is space for many winners, but only if they are willing to evolve. And evolution starts not with pride, but with preparation. What Pakistan, and any lagging nation, needs is not a reaction to India's success, but a strategy for its own. It needs to stop measuring its worth by the rise or fall of others and start building systems that produce their own stories of success. In a world where data, talent, and speed matter more than territory and slogans, the true winners will be those who understand that another country's achievement is not an obstacle. It's an invitation to rise. Power no longer lies in weapons, but in data innovation and digital trust. The world we are living in today is not the world of the 20th century, where strength was measured by tanks, fighter jets, and the size of an army. Today, power is invisible. It's written in code, stored in clouds, and protected by encryption. A country with missiles but no digital infrastructure is weaker than a country with stable servers, global platforms, and intellectual property. The winners of today's battles are not those who occupy land, but those who dominate the platforms billions of people rely on every day. Control over digital ecosystems, financial systems, e-commerce, logistics, and artificial intelligence has become the new currency of influence. Look at how economies have shifted. The most valuable companies in the world are not oil producers or weapons manufacturers. They are tech companies. The influence they hold is not just financial, but social, cultural, and even political. A country that can create a digital product used by billions holds far more sway than one that simply controls a military zone. Nations that recognize this shift early and invest in building their digital economy are the ones defining global trends, attracting talent, and setting international standards. And it's not just about creating the technology. It's about building the trust that the world feels safe using it. Innovation is no longer optional. It is the difference between relevance and irrelevance. Countries that fail to innovate are not just falling behind. They are disappearing from the conversation. Innovation is not only about creating new products, but also about building new systems, solving problems faster, adapting to global changes, and empowering local talent to think beyond borders. A single coder can do what 1,000 soldiers cannot. A powerful idea, deployed digitally, can reshape industries, alter perceptions, and even influence geopolitics without a single shot being fired. That's the level of power we're talking about. And then there's data, the new oil. But unlike oil, data doesn't run out. It multiplies and it learns. Whoever controls the data controls the behavior, preferences, and decisions of populations. But it's not just about collecting it. It's about using it responsibly. Digital trust becomes the cornerstone. A nation with the world's data, but no global trust is dangerous, not powerful. Trust is built when a country respects privacy, protects users, and plays by international norms. That's why some countries with advanced tech still find themselves isolated. They have no digital trust. Others who may have less aggressive tools win partnerships because they are seen as reliable players in the ecosystem. The future belongs to those who can build systems that others rely on. Look at payment platforms, logistics networks, cloud computing services. The countries that create and export these technologies are setting the rules for how the world trades, communicates, and lives. Their influence is quiet but massive. They don't need to wave flags or conduct parades. Their presence is in your pocket, your device, your internet connection. They are everywhere and nowhere. That's real power. This shift from traditional to digital power means that nations need to redefine their priorities. Instead of spending billions on weapons that may never be used, they need to invest in engineers, cybersecurity, data protection laws, and digital literacy. The battlefield is now in code. The weapons are software tools. The allies are those who share platforms, not borders. The defense is encryption, and the offense is innovation. Those who understand this will lead. Those who don't will complain about the world changing while others write the rules. And in this new world, power does not need to conquer. It needs to connect. It doesn't destroy. It decentralizes. It doesn't march. It moves silently through algorithms, platforms, and user experiences. This is the reality that many still resist because they are attached to the symbols of old power. But history has shown that those who cling to the past get left there. America's discomfort comes from losing control, not losing values. For decades, the global order was designed around a central assumption that the United States would lead, others would follow, and its influence would remain unchallenged. It wasn't just military dominance or economic scale that kept this order intact, but the deep-rooted belief that America's way was the best way. Its institutions, its platforms, its alliances were seen as the gold standard. But the world has changed, not through sudden rebellion, but through quiet transformation. Other nations have started building their own systems, setting their own rules, and creating alternatives that work just as efficiently, sometimes even better. This shift has not been driven by confrontation, but by competence. In this new landscape, America no longer sits alone at the top. Countries like India have emerged, not asking for permission but showing results. Their rise does not attack American values, but it does challenge American dominance. When a nation like India develops its own payment infrastructure, launches its own space missions, creates billion-dollar startups, and builds global software talent, it tells the world that innovation is no longer centralized. And when that innovation no longer flows exclusively from Silicon Valley or Wall Street, it creates discomfort. Not because America has failed, but because others have finally learned how to succeed without relying on America's systems. For years, the world looked to the United States for leadership in technology, finance, culture, and diplomacy. But now, multiple centers of influence have formed. The decentralization of power is not chaotic, it's natural. But for those who have always been at the center, decentralization feels like disruption. America's discomfort is not rooted in moral panic or ideological shock. It is rooted in the slow realization that control is slipping, that the rules are being rewritten by those who were never invited to write them before. This is not a rejection of American values. It is an assertion of independence by nations who have grown confident in their own capabilities. This shift is especially visible in the digital world. America once set the tone for every major internet policy, every platform decision, every global standard. But now, India sets privacy laws that other countries notice. China builds super apps that combine 10 American platforms into one. Europe enforces data regulations that Silicon Valley must obey. In this environment, America is no longer the sole author of the digital future. It's a participant, still powerful, but no longer unquestioned. That shift is difficult to accept for a system used to steering the ship. But discomfort is not the same as decline. It is a signal, a friction, a moment of truth. It forces introspection. America still has immense power, but it needs to adjust how that power is exercised. The age of domination must give way to the age of collaboration. The platforms that succeed now are those that invite participation, not just consumption. Leadership now depends on adaptability, not just authority. America's future role depends not on forcing others to follow its model, but on learning how to evolve within a more competitive, pluralistic world. Nations like India are not trying to dethrone America. They are trying to build their own thrones. They're saying, we don't want to copy, we want to create. That creation is not an insult to anyone, it's an indication of growth. But in a world where power was once concentrated, even growth can feel threatening. America's systems are still respected, but they are no longer the only option. And when people have options, control naturally diffuses. This diffusion does not mean instability, it means evolution. But for those used to writing all the rules, even healthy evolution feels like a loss. It feels like the end of something, when it may actually be the beginning of something better. This discomfort is not caused by hostile enemies, but by confident peers. Not by collapsing empires, but by rising partners. Not by failure of values, but by the success of others who finally had a chance to catch up. Countries grow when they stop blaming others and start building quietly. The loudest nations are not always the strongest. The strongest ones are often busy in silence. Investing, training, improving, correcting, and creating. Blame is cheap. It is a distraction that delays progress. The more time a nation spends pointing fingers, the less time it has to look in the mirror. When a country falls behind economically or technologically, the reasons are rarely external. Markets don't care about excuses. Innovation doesn't wait for apologies. Growth does not happen in response to slogans. It happens in response to action. The countries that lead the world today are the ones that accepted responsibility for their weaknesses and quietly worked on turning them into strengths. Blaming others is easy because it feels like control. It creates the illusion that someone else is responsible for where you are, and if they just stopped doing what they're doing, you'd rise. But real leaders know that progress is never built on someone else stopping. It's built on you starting. Whether it's about a neighbor doing better, a superpower shifting alliances, or a competitor gaining market share, none of it should be the center of your strategy. Your strategy must begin with your own people, your own systems, your own mindset. Countries that grow don't wait for ideal conditions. They create momentum in spite of conditions. They solve internal problems without external excuses. They don't ask for the world to treat them better. They focus on becoming better so the world has no choice but to treat them differently. The quiet part is important. True builders don't make noise during construction. They work when nobody's watching. They prepare when nobody's listening. And then one day, the world turns around and realizes they've arrived. The loudest countries often spend their energy on perception. The quiet ones spend their energy on results. The media may not notice them for years, but eventually their impact becomes too big to ignore. Their universities start producing global talent. Their startups begin raising global capital. Their infrastructure starts attracting global admiration. And all of this happens without drama. Just quiet, focused, disciplined effort. Growth is also about discipline. The discipline to delay applause. The discipline to build institutions that last beyond political cycles. The discipline to let data guide decisions, not emotions. The discipline to invest in education that may take 10 or 20 years to pay off. This is the type of long-term thinking that separates countries that grow from those that stagnate. And this discipline is rarely loud. It doesn't come with speeches or parades. It comes from leaders and citizens who understand that real progress is boring, consistent, and often invisible in the beginning. When a country is always reacting, always angry, always blaming, always comparing, it stays distracted. And distraction is the enemy of growth. A focused country minds its own business. Literally. It looks at where the jobs will come from in the next decade. It maps how to teach its children the skills of tomorrow. It doesn't waste time proving things to its neighbors. It proves things to its people, through services, through infrastructure, through opportunity. This kind of inward focus doesn't make headlines, but it builds legacies. Every country has setbacks. Every society makes mistakes. But some take those mistakes and build on them. Others take those mistakes and blame them on history, on neighbors, on fate. The difference between the two is not resources. It's mindset. Mindset is the foundation of national growth. A growth mindset doesn't deny weakness. It acknowledges it and works on it. It doesn't wait for others to fall. It builds systems to rise regardless of who is ahead, and it doesn't seek permission to grow. It finds reasons to grow. Even in adversity, even in isolation, even when the world isn't watching, the builders build. And eventually, their silence turns into strength. True humiliation happens only when you stop trying to improve. Failure, loss, defeat, these are not humiliations. They are part of every journey, whether it's for a person, a company, or a nation. What defines humiliation is not the event itself, but what follows. If after a setback you give up, if you freeze, if you blame others and decide not to evolve, that is when humiliation becomes real. That is when it moves from an external situation to an internal identity. When a country is defeated in war, outperformed in technology, or bypassed in global rankings, the real defeat does not lie in the loss. It lies in how that nation chooses to respond. The danger is not in being behind. The danger is in becoming comfortable with being behind. The world does not humiliate those who keep moving. It respects those who rise after falling, who rebuild after breaking, who listen after losing. Every country has moments when it is overtaken, misunderstood, underestimated. The most powerful nations today were once colonized, bankrupt, ignored. Their turning point came not from sympathy or revenge, but from effort. They decided to write their own story, on their own terms, and to do it through education, innovation, and relentless execution. They accepted their failures not as shame, but as feedback. That's how real progress begins. Improvement is the shield against humiliation. It doesn't mean you become perfect overnight. It means you show the world that you are not finished. That you still have the energy, the courage, and the discipline to grow. You can't choose when the world will respect you, but you can choose to become respectable. That process doesn't require applause. It requires accountability. The nation that keeps trying, keeps learning, keeps adapting. That nation will never be truly humiliated, even in its lowest moments. It is tempting to respond to failure with noise, to issue bold statements, to hold rallies to remind people of past glory. But past glory is not protection. It is memory. And memory does not feed the future. The future needs fuel. Fuel that comes from new ideas, new systems, and a new culture of performance. If you fall and respond with pride instead of plans, with anger instead of analysis, with propaganda instead of policy, then you are choosing humiliation. You are confirming what your critics already believe. That you are more interested in looking strong than becoming strong. Growth does not happen in the spotlight. It happens in the shadows of effort. When a country is embarrassed on the world stage, that moment should be used to examine, not retaliate. Every criticism, however painful, contains a lesson, and only the wise can extract it. Those who focus on their pride, on saving face, on blaming the outside world, they miss the most valuable part of failure, which is the blueprint it offers for reinvention. Improvement is not emotional. It is structural, and structure is not changed by anger. It is changed by action. Even when the world mocks, even when the headlines are harsh, the most important question is not what others say. It is what you do next. Will you invest in better schools or louder speeches? Will you focus on clean governance or cleaner narratives? Will you fund research or rallies? These choices seem small in the moment, but they define everything in the long term. Real strength is quiet, persistent, often invisible in the beginning, but it builds a foundation that cannot be shaken by temporary embarrassment. The countries that have risen out of true despair didn't rise by asking for respect. They earned it. They didn't demand to be seen as powerful. They built power others could not ignore. And that power didn't come from revenge. It came from reinvention. The reinvention of mindset, of strategy, of national purpose. It started with the decision that humiliation would not be a sentence, but a signal. The smart ones will not protest. They will not prepare. In every moment of crisis or perceived humiliation, most people rush to express their outrage. They take to social media, they organize protests, they demand attention, they look for someone to blame. But the truly strategic minds take a different route. They go quiet. They disappear from the noise and reappear only after they have done the work. They prepare in silence, and they strike with progress. In the age of constant visibility, this behavior looks strange. It looks like passivity. But in reality, it is discipline. It is the mindset that values action over emotion and results over reactions. The ones who win are not always the loudest. They are the most prepared. When a nation faces a moment of shame or defeat, the common reaction is to respond publicly, to defend dignity through words. But dignity does not live in words. It lives in outcomes. You do not rebuild national pride with emotional speeches. You rebuild it by making sure the next generation is smarter, faster, and better trained. By ensuring that your economy is more innovative, your institutions are more honest, and your systems are more efficient. These are not changes that happen on camera. They happen in classrooms, in boardrooms, in policy meetings, in late-night coding sessions, in lonely hours of strategy and reflection. Protest has its place. Speaking up has value, but if it becomes a substitute for preparation, then it is not resistance. It is escape. It allows people to feel they are doing something without actually changing anything. Real change is slow, quiet, and often boring. It requires focus, consistency, and sacrifice. Most people don't have the patience for it. But the ones who do, they are the ones who surprise the world later. They do not tell you they are coming. They just show up ready. They are not interested in looking powerful. They are working on becoming powerful. Look at how the most successful companies respond to market defeat. They don't waste time attacking their competitors. They go back to the drawing board. They improve the product. They listen to users. They train their teams. They become better not through confrontation, but through correction. Countries must act the same way. When faced with a geopolitical setback or a public embarrassment, the first instinct should not be retaliation. It should be recalibration. What did we miss? What can we learn? How do we avoid repeating this mistake? These are the questions that build resilience. And resilience is always more powerful than revenge. The biggest mistake a nation can make is trying to win back pride through performance for the audience instead of performance for the future. If everything becomes about what the world sees, then nothing is left for what actually works. The smart ones know this. They are not obsessed with the narrative, they are obsessed with the results. They train young entrepreneurs. They invest in science. They encourage risk-taking. They build ecosystems that attract talent instead of pushing it away. They don't post about success. They produce it, and because they prepare in silence, their growth feels sudden to everyone else. But it was never sudden. It was the result of preparation done when everyone else was distracted by noise. You can't change perception without first changing performance. You can't demand respect until you build systems that deserve it. You can't lead until you first learn. This is why the smart ones are not seen in the early stages. They're busy doing the work others are avoiding. They are learning skills, not slogans. They are mastering tools, not trends. They are watching, studying, designing. They are preparing because they know that history only remembers those who did the work, not those who made the noise. And in the world of global competition, being underestimated is not a weakness. It is an advantage if you use that time to prepare better than anyone else ever expected. In this new world, you are not strong because you shout. You are strong because your internet is fast, your youth is smart, and your thinking is global. The old signs of power, how loud a country's leadership speaks, how many people chant in its rallies, how many weapons it displays in its parades, are becoming less relevant in a world that is run by speed, skill, and strategy. The loudest voice in the room is not necessarily the one with the best ideas. It is not the one that creates the next startup, writes the next algorithm, or solves the next climate or energy crisis. The ones who build quietly, with competence and clarity, are shaping the world far more than those who demand attention without delivering results. Strength in today's world comes from the ability to keep up with change. It comes from training millions of young people in critical thinking, digital literacy, financial literacy, and entrepreneurship. It comes from understanding that the classroom is now as important as the battlefield, and the bandwidth of a country determines its economic future, more than the size of its army. A nation that has built the infrastructure to give every child access to information, every business access to digital tools, and every citizen access to opportunity, is more powerful than one that relies on historical pride or nationalistic slogans alone. The modern world rewards agility, not arrogance. The speed at which a country's youth can adapt, learn, and apply new knowledge will define its influence. Countries that are investing in coding boot camps, AI research, clean energy innovation, and digital public infrastructure are already writing the rules of the next global economy. And those that are still busy fighting over borders, rewriting history books, or censoring information are falling further behind. The battlefield has shifted from geography to intelligence. The ammunition is no longer firepower. It's intellectual capital. The outcome is not determined by who yells the loudest, but by who solves the hardest problems first. When your youth is smart, your future is secure. Smart doesn't mean degrees. It means curiosity, discipline, creativity, and access to the right tools. Smart youth ask difficult questions. They don't just memorize, they explore, experiment, and innovate. Countries that encourage this mindset, that reward experimentation rather than punishing failure, are building a generation that will not just survive global disruption, they will shape it. And this generation does not care about outdated political narratives. They care about impact. They want to create, they want to solve, they want to grow. The government that enables this energy is the one that will thrive in the new age. Having a global mindset means understanding that no country can isolate itself and hope to win. It means preparing your citizens to compete, collaborate, and connect with the world. It means understanding foreign markets, speaking multiple languages, and being comfortable with diversity and complexity. It means thinking beyond borders, beyond limitations, beyond short-term wins. The internet has already erased traditional boundaries. Those who resist this shift are trying to win in a game that no longer exists. Those who embrace it are already building the future. Strength today is invisible until it becomes undeniable. It is hidden in the quality of code, the reliability of infrastructure, the credibility of institutions, and the maturity of leadership. It is in how a nation treats its own people and how it handles disagreement. It is in how quickly it can respond to crisis without collapsing. It is in how effectively it can turn a local idea into a global solution. This is the kind of strength that doesn't need to be announced. It is the kind that speaks through results, through stability, through progress. Global leadership is not about volume. It's about value. The more valuable you become to the rest of the world, the more you innovate, trade, educate, and contribute, the more influence you gain without ever having to ask for it. The strongest nations are not demanding to be respected. They are becoming too essential to ignore. And this kind of power, once achieved, is more stable, more sustainable, and more respected than anything that can be achieved through noise or fear.